This film is based on a true story. In the opening scene, we see a terrified woman flagging down cars on a dark highway and screaming for help. One of the cars stops. Panicked, the woman says she was kidnapped. The driver immediately calls the police. The presumed abduction victim is Sherri Papini. 3 weeks earlier, Sherri Papini is a housewife who has devoted herself entirely to her family. Sherri and her husband have 2 wonderful children, a son Cameron, and a daughter Hannah. Today is Hannah's 4th birthday, and they are throwing a party to celebrate. In other people's eyes, Sherri is the perfect wife and mother. She always says she did not truly find herself until she had children. Sherri gives a toast in front of the guests, thanking Keith for giving her such a wonderful life. Meanwhile, he is absorbed in his phone and barely notices his wife. Suddenly the children's bounce house begins to deflate, causing a commotion. Sherri quickly gets the children out, so no one is hurt. Even so, she is upset because she is afraid the others will think badly of her. Sherri's friends, however, genuinely think she is a superwoman. She effortlessly balances caring for the children with household chores, while some of them cannot even find time to make dinner. Everyone admires Sherri, who on top of everything else, is strikingly beautiful. She remains upset all evening, even after the party is over. Keith does not understand why his wife is so obsessed with everything being perfect. A deflated bounce house could hardly have ruined the party, although Sherri clearly sees it differently. It is not really about the bounce house at all. She just wanted Keith to finally notice her. The man apologizes to his wife in case he has done something wrong. Sherri asks him to let her get a job. Their family's financial situation has been far from ideal lately, and the party has put a considerable dent in their budget. Sherri would like to contribute more. It is important for her to feel that she matters. But Keith does not want his wife to work because she is already so busy with the children. He promises her that they will manage. Sherri's mind is constantly occupied with getting Cameron to piano lessons on time, and Hannah to ballet. She tirelessly makes breakfast and dinner, drives the children to school and their activities, and tries to keep everything under control. Sometimes Sherri feels that Keith does not appreciate her efforts enough. In an attempt to become even better, she does charity work. She can never shake the feeling that she is not good enough. Keith, who has been working as a sales associate for 5 years, tells his boss outright that he wants a promotion. Keith is good at his job, and after all he has 2 children to support. But he does not get the promotion, and the overdue bills keep piling up. Sherri goes for a run every day to stay in shape. During one of those runs, she senses that someone is following her, and the unsettling feeling only grows stronger. When Keith returns home after an exhausting day at work and finds no one there, he begins to worry. Sherri should have picked up the children a long time ago. It is already evening, and they are still nowhere to be found. Keith is no longer merely worried, he is panicking. Sherri is not answering his calls or messages. Worse, she never picked up the children. Keith goes looking for her and finds her phone along her usual running route, with a lock of hair lying nearby. It is clear that the worst has happened. Keith immediately calls the police. Although the woman has only been missing for a few hours, officers quickly arrive at the suspected crime scene. The evidence looks as though it was planted there deliberately. Molly Rowlands, the lead detective assigned to the case, questions Keith. As is often the case in investigations like this, the victim's loved ones are the first to come under suspicion. Keith has nothing to hide and willingly cooperates with the investigation. According to him, Sherri had no enemies and was always kind to everyone. She had no reason to disappear voluntarily either. Detective Rowland suggests that Sherri may have been abducted by human traffickers. Cases like that are not unheard of in Reading. For now, this is the leading theory, since Keith has no obvious motive to hurt his own wife. He works long hours and has never had an affair. The man has no idea what to tell the children. Why has their mother not come home? Meanwhile, Sherri is closer than anyone could have imagined. Struggling to keep himself together, Keith tells the children that their mother has gone away for a little while. He has to stay strong for them. A man named Chris welcomes Sherri into his home. The woman says the place is nice. She does not look as though she is being held against her will. Keith has to handle the children on his own, making breakfast, getting them ready for school and preschool, and driving them there. All of that used to be Sherri's responsibility. Missing person posters for Sherri Papini are put up all over town. Police and volunteers conduct searches, combing through the nearby woods. The woman seems to have vanished into thin air. Detective Rowlands has already discovered that Sherri had a number in her phone saved under a woman's name. Apparently the two never met and only flirted. The man has an airtight alibi, he was at work all day. Keith gives an interview, appealing to the public and begging anyone with information to come forward. Meanwhile, Sherri is doing just fine with her ex-boyfriend, Chris. She misses her children terribly. Chris promises that they will get them as soon as they have the chance. Sherri feels like a terrible mother. Chris comforts her, saying that he is the only one who knows what she has been through. The woman deeply regrets ever marrying Keith. Everything could have turned out differently. Sherri has always had a difficult relationship with her mother. Even so, Loretta Grafe wants to find Sherri just as badly as Keith does. Right now they have to stick together. Loretta wants to help Keith with the children and offers to make dinner, but she nearly starts a fire. The children do not seem very happy to have their grandmother around. Loretta rarely visited them. Sherri and Chris hold each other tightly. They were in love back in high school, but their lives eventually took them in different directions. Sherri feels utterly exhausted yet strangely at peace. Chris is the one she needs. Sherri was once truly happy in this house. Back then, her life was free of worries and responsibilities. While Keith gives another interview and successfully passes a polygraph test, Sherri tidies up, scrubbing the toilet, the stove, and everything else. Keith has absolutely nothing to hide. He is willing to do anything to find his wife and bring her home. After making the house where she plans to spend the next few weeks feel more comfortable, Sherri thinks about her children. She has no idea how badly Keith is suffering. He cries helplessly, unable to do anything. All Keith can do is wait and hope for the best. Sherri finds an interview with Keith online in which he tells the story of their love. They had been friends since 7th grade, and their marriage had always seemed perfect. Keith cannot sleep because he keeps imagining the worst. The children cry at night, missing their mother. Keith begs Detective Rollins to do something, even though the police and the FBI are already doing everything they can. 15 days have passed since the disappearance, and the case has gone nowhere. There are no leads. Sherri's name is all over the news and on the front pages of newspapers. The entire country wants to know what happened to the housewife and mother of two. Sherri is consumed by unbearable guilt. No one could have imagined that she had run away with her lover. Chris reminds Sherri of how happy she used to be. The woman wants to go for a walk and get some fresh air. Being cooped up inside is slowly driving her crazy. Chris, however, insists that it is too dangerous. If anyone sees them, their peaceful little world will come to an abrupt end. Keith manages to raise a huge amount of money to fund the search for Sherri. The whole country rallies around the devastated man. He will never stop fighting, although his hope fades a little more each day. Loretta is also actively involved in the search, as are Sherri's friends. None of them knows that Sherri is nowhere near as perfect as she has tried to appear. Chris's cousin Andrew begins to suspect that something is wrong because Chris has barely left the house for the past 2 weeks. Chris explains that he has a new girlfriend who is too shy to meet his family just yet. But Andrew has already caught a glimpse of Sherri. The woman can only leave the house for a short while at night. The fact that her mother has come back and is even helping with the search unsettles Sherri. Perhaps Loretta truly is sorry. Sherri realizes that she has made a terrible mistake and can only hope it is not too late to fix it. Chris promised her a big house, but all she got was a miserable 2-bedroom apartment. Although Sherri loves Chris, she cannot go on living like this. They decide to make everything look like an abduction. Sherri expects that she can simply return to her old life. At her request, Chris injures her, no matter how difficult it is for him. This will remain their secret. Sherri runs onto the highway at night, and pretending to be an escaped victim, begins desperately calling for help. With bruises on her face, she looks very convincing. Keith receives a call in the middle of the night. When he hears that his wife has been found, he rushes straight to the hospital. In truth, the man had all but given up hope of ever seeing her alive again. He cries as he asks who did this to her. Sherri only whispers how much she missed him. Keith promises to make her happy for the rest of her life. Detective Rollins comes to Sherri's hospital room to ask her a few questions. Sherri, however, refuses to speak to the police, explaining that her abductors had posed as officers. She insists that she will only talk with her husband present. Detective Rollins has no objection. Sherri tells an outlandish story about 2 Hispanic women forcing her into a van while she was out running and holding her in a house for 3 weeks. Sherri cannot properly describe either the route to the house or what her abductors looked like, but the strangest part of the story is the lack of a motive. Women rarely kidnap other women. Detective Rollins immediately senses that something is wrong. Sherri's return becomes a media sensation. While people celebrate, the police try to piece together the timeline, but more and more inconsistencies emerge. Hannah and Cameron throw themselves into their mother's arms after 3 weeks apart. Sherri even allows Loretta to stay in their home for a while. She is genuinely determined to repair her relationship with her daughter. A week passes. Keith spends all his time with his wife, promising to take better care of her from now on. He is terrified of losing her a second time. Sherri plays the role of a loving wife as convincingly as ever. The forensic results come back. No female DNA is found on Sherri's clothing, but male DNA is. So far there is no match in the database. Detective Rollins realizes that they need to find out what really happened as soon as possible because the Latino community is living in fear. Sherri tells her husband again and again about all the horrors she supposedly endured. She describes being forced to relieve herself in a cat litter box and being deprived of food and water. Keith believes every word without question. Sherri suggests using the money raised for the search to pay off their debts and loans. Soon she goes to the police station for questioning. This time it is a formal interview. Rollins asks her to describe the days she spent in captivity. Sherri claims that her abductors kept her locked in a closet most of the time. At the same time, the woman says she does not want to dwell on what happened and would rather focus on the present. Detective Rollins cannot help noticing how nervous Sherri is. After all, who in her position would not want the women who hurt her caught as quickly as possible? Yet Sherri shows no desire to cooperate with the investigation. Besides, the story of two Hispanic women abducting a housewife in broad daylight sounds completely implausible. Sherri seems to be making up details as she goes, and her account contains more and more contradictions. She is now a celebrity, so she is not surprised when people approach her on the street or in cafes. Many admire her courage and resilience. Sherri's relationship with her mother gradually improves. Loretta, however, senses that her daughter is holding something back. Whenever the conversation turns in that direction, Sherri changes the subject, saying that she remembers everything that happened between them. No matter what, she will never be able to forgive her mother completely, no matter how hard they try to pretend that everything is fine. 3 weeks after Sherri comes home, she and Keith celebrate their 7th wedding anniversary with their closest friends and family. The worst seems to be behind them, yet Keith cannot shake the vague feeling that something is wrong. At first Sherri claimed that her abductors were about the same build as she was, but now she says they were stocky. Detective Rollins speaks with Sherri's ex-husband, David Dreyfus. They were married for 5 years. According to David, Sherri is prone to lying. She lied about small things as well as serious ones, such as being abused by her mother. After this conversation, Rollins holds a press conference and announces that the investigation is entering a new phase, despite the lack of evidence or suspects. Sherri attends a support group for women suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Most of them have never managed to return to a normal life. Sherri meanwhile has to maintain her reputation as a victim. While digging through the darker corners of the internet, Rollins comes across an old comment Sherri made about Latinos, and it is far from flattering. She posted it several years earlier under her maiden name. During group therapy, when it is Sherri's turn to speak, she sheds fake tears and says that her kidnapping ordeal hurt many people, but she found the strength to get through it. Plagued by doubts, Keith asks his wife one day how tall her abductors were. Sherri vaguely replies that she cannot remember exactly. Keith genuinely does not understand how she could fail to remember the women she saw over the course of 3 weeks. The police have not even been able to produce reliable composite sketches. Sherri seems to be deliberately obstructing the investigation. The woman simply says that she went through a traumatic experience and therefore remembers very little. Keith only wants to get to the truth, and no matter how hard his wife tries to convince him that they need to move on, he makes her go to the police. For the first time, Sherri tells Detective Rollins that her abductors branded her with the word Exodus as a reference to the biblical story of slaves being freed. After asking Keith to leave the interview room, Rollins shows Sherri a written transcript of Rollins's conversation with David. Sherri has not thought about him in a long time. According to David, Loretta never abused her daughter. Sherri injured herself and claimed that her mother had beaten her. Sherri refuses to continue the interview and leaves. 6 months later, Detective Rollins is still determined to uncover the truth and speaks with Andrew, Chris's cousin. The young man admits that Sherri was once engaged to Chris. Andrew also saw Sherri at Chris's house while she was listed as missing. He did not speak up earlier because he was afraid his cousin would get into trouble. Rollins rummages through Chris's trash to obtain his DNA and compare it with the sample recovered from Sherri's clothing. The detective then speaks to Chris himself. He says that Sherri was the love of his life, but she refused to marry him because he was too immature. So when Sherri contacted him many years later, Chris knew he would do anything to get her back. They communicated for 6 months before her disappearance, using burner phones. At some point they decided to stage Sherri's kidnapping so they could be together for good. Chris rented a van. When the detective asks how Sherri spent those 3 weeks, Chris says that she cleaned the house and watched news reports about her own disappearance. Chris believed that Sherri had escaped an abusive husband. Detective Rollins explains that there is no evidence Keith ever abused his wife, while Sherri is known to distort the facts. Only now does Chris realize that everything Sherri told him was probably a lie. Even so, he cannot bring himself to hate her. All he wanted was to make Sherri happy. Rollins calls Keith and tells him that they have found the person responsible, so the couple must come to the police station immediately. It takes every ounce of Sherri's strength to keep a straight face. Detective Rollins hands Sherri a photograph of Chris and asks whether she recognizes the man. The woman denies ever knowing him. Rollins points out that a witness saw Sherri at Chris's house while she was listed as missing. Keith realizes that they are talking about his wife's ex-boyfriend. At that moment, the detective states that no one kidnapped Sherri and that there is irrefutable evidence she ran away with Chris voluntarily. While Keith struggles to comprehend what he is hearing, Sherri continues to insist that it did not happen that way and that 2 Hispanic women kidnapped her. But there is no point in lying anymore because Chris has confessed to everything. Sherri had also spent all that time convincing him that Keith beat her. The man cannot believe what he is hearing. Sherri has not only destroyed her own family but also diverted law enforcement resources away from real victims. 2 days later, Sherri Papini is finally arrested. She shouts at the officers to call her husband. Keith, however, decides that same day to file for divorce and seek sole custody of the children. In tears, Sherri says that she only wanted him to notice her again. She calls herself a victim. But Keith walks away for good. Detective Rollins holds a press conference and states that Sherri Papini's case consumed $150,000 in public funds, money that could have helped real victims. September 19, 2022. In court, Sherri admits what she has done and says that she is remorseful and ready to accept the punishment she deserves. She is sentenced to 18 months in prison followed by 3 years of supervised release. She must also pay $300,000 in restitution. Most likely Sherri would have kept lying if she had not been caught. Some time later, the woman begins therapy. She has lost her reputation, her marriage, and her children. A voiceover then shares details of the real story. Keith remained with the children and filed for divorce. At the time the film was made, Sherri was serving her sentence in prison.